ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। नष्टप्रायेषु अभद्रेषु नित्यं भागवत सेवया भगवतीरुत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। ॐ अज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपकदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. Reading from Srimad Bhagavatam. By His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. We are reading from Canto 3, Chapter 7, Further Inquiries by Vidura. Currently we are at text 37, where Vidura is very enthusiastically putting forward all the different questions. He has already prayed that, my dear sir, that I may have inquired certain things, but just like unto one's followers, disciples, and sons and daughters, Shishyanam Putranam Chadvichottama Anuvrtanam, one explains even without being asked. Similarly, I have put forward certain questions to you. Please explain all those and also explain what I have not asked as well. And even after asking this, now he again continues his series of questions and he says now, text 37. तत्वानां भगवत्तेषां कतिधा प्रतिसङ्क्रमं यत्रेमं कम् उपासीरन् कौस्विद् अनुशेरते. Translation.
Please describe how many dissolutions there are for the elements of material nature, and who survives after the dissolutions, who serve the Lord while he is asleep. Purport: in the Brahma Samhita 5.47 and 4.8, it is said that all the material manifestations with innumerable universes appear and disappear with the breathing of Mahavishnu lying in Yoga Nidra or mystic sleep.
Yeah.
यह
यः
कारणमार्णवजने
कारणर्णवजने भजति स्म योग निद्रामनन्तजगदण्डस्वरोमकूप आधारशक्तिमवलम्ब्य परां स्वमूर्तिं गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि। यस्यैकनिश्वसितकालमथावलम्ब्य जीवन्ति लोमविलजा जगदण्डनाथ विष्णुर्महान् स ह्ययस्य कलाविशेषो गोविन्दमादिपुरुषं तमहं भजामि.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Govinda, the ultimate and supreme personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, lies sleeping unlimitedly on the causal ocean in order to create unlimited numbers of universes during that sleep. He lies on the water by his own internal potency, and I worship that original supreme Godhead. Due to his breathing, innumerable universes come into existence, and when he withdraws his breath, there occurs the dissolution of all the lords of the universes. That plenary portion of the Supreme Lord is called Mahavishnu, and he is a part of Lord Krishna. I worship Govinda, the original Lord. After the dissolution of the material manifestations, the Lord and his kingdom beyond the causal ocean do not disappear, nor do the inhabitants of Lord's associates. The associates of the Lord are far more numerous than the living entities who have forgotten the Lord due to material association. The impersonalist explanation of the word aham in the four verses of the original Bhagavatam, aham evasham, aham evasam, evagar, etc., is refuted here. The Lord and his eternal associates remain after the dissolution. Vidura's inquiry about such persons is a clear indication of the existence of all the paraphernalia of the Lord. This is also confirmed in the Kashi Khanda as quoted by both Jiva Goswami and Srila Vishwanatha Chakravarti, who follow in the footsteps of Srila Sridhara Swami. न चावन्ते हि यद भक्ता महत्याम प्रलयापदि अतो अच्युतो अखिलले लोके स एकः सर्वगो अव्ययः. The devotees of the Lord never annihilated their individual existences even after the dissolution of the entire cosmic manifestation. The Lord and the devotees who associate with him are always eternal in both the material and the spiritual worlds. Hare Krishna.
Vidura further inquires, please explain to me, Katidha Pratisankrama, how many dissolutions are there for the elements of the material nature? So we have already discussed about Mahattattva Pradhana. And who survives after the dissolution to serve the Lord who is laying on the, while he is in the mystic sleep, Yoga Nidra. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes Mahavishnu laying in the Yoga Nidra from Brahma Samhita, that how the Lord is laying on the Karanarnava Jale, and with his breathing, Yasyaika Nishvasita, there are infinite universes that are coming out of the transcendental body of the Lord. And when he breathes in, all these innumerable universes come inside the body of the Supreme Lord. And this Mahavishnu is just the one of the plenary portion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, whom I worship. And this is the prayer of Brahmaji. So after the dissolution of the material manifestation, Lord and the kingdom of the Lord, they do not disappear. They remain. Nasyasyu na pranasya. The parastasmat tu bhavanyo, there is superior nature, parastasmat, which remains even after the dissolution of the material cosmos. So when the material creation is sucked inside the body of the Lord and his spiritual creation still remains. And there are associates of the Lord who also remain after the material dissolution. So many times when the impersonalists say that after Pralalaya, you become one with the Lord, everything becomes one, Prabhupada says this is not supported herein. And this is what is, when the impersonalist, Mayavadis, when they try to comment on the original 4 verses of Bhagavatam, Aham evasam evagre, they say that Aham, that means Jiva, also becomes merged with the Supreme after the dissolution. But Prabhupada says, Vidura's query here very clearly indicates that, so he is asking here, who remains after the dissolution to serve the Supreme Lord while he is asleep in Yoga Nidra? That means Prabhupada says that there is a clear indication of existence of such persons who remain after the dissolution. They still remain their individualness and desire to serve the Supreme Lord. And then Srila Prabhupada quotes here Kashi Khanda, which is quoted by 3 stalwart personalities, Sridhara Swami, Srila Jiva Goswami, and Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti. And this shlok ascertains that devotees of the Lord neither annihilate their individual existence even after dissolution of the entire cosmic manifestation. And this is in sync with just simple Bhagavad Gita verse that, the soul cannot be destroyed. Right. They remain always eternal in the material world and also in the spiritual world. So it is not that after material dissolution, they will just merge into the Supreme. No, they retain their individuality even after the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Text 38. Purushasya cha samsthanam swarupam va parasya cha jnanam cha nigamam yattat guru shishya prayojanam. Translation.
Translation: what are the truths regarding the living entities and the Supreme Personality of Godhead? What are their identities? What are the specific values in the knowledge in the Vedas? And what are the necessities for the spiritual master and his disciples? Purport: the living entities are constitutionally servitors of the Lord who can accept all kinds of service from everyone. It is clearly declared in Bhagavatam 5.29 that the Lord is the supreme enjoyer of the benefits of all sacrifices and penances, the proprietor of all that is manifested, and the friend of all living entities. That is his real identity. Therefore, when the living entity accepts the supreme proprietorship of the Lord and acts in that attitude, he resumes his real identity. In order to elevate the living entity to this standard of knowledge, there is the necessity of spiritual association. The bona fide spiritual master desires that his disciples know the process of rendering transcendental service to the Lord, and the disciples also know that they have to learn about the eternal relationship between God and the living entity from a self realized soul. To disseminate transcendental knowledge, one must retire from mundane activities on the strength of enlightenment in knowledge in terms of Vedic wisdom. That is the sum and substance of all the questions in this verse. Hare Krishna.
Further, Vidura is asking, Purushasya samsthanam. 4 questions he asks, that what is the truth regarding the Supreme Lord and the living entities? What is their real identity? What is the real identity of the Lord? What is the real identity of living entity? What are the specific values in the knowledge of the Vedas? And what is the necessities for the spiritual master and disciples? So these are the 4 questions asked by Vidura further. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada gives the sum and substance answer to these questions, because Prabhupada is like, people may or may not read further. So Prabhupada gives the answers here. The real identity of a living entity is Jivera Swarupahe Krishnera Nityadas. Real identity of the Supreme Lord is Bhoktaram Yagya Tapasam Sarvaloka Maheshwaram Saridam Sarvabhutanam Jnatva Mam Shantim Rachati. So Bhagavad Gita 5.29. So the Supreme Lord is the supreme enjoyer of all the benefits and sacrifices. Bhoktaram, Yagya and Tapasam. He is Sarvaloka Maheshwaram. He is the proprietor of all the planets. And also Surudham. He is the greatest well-wishing friend of all living entities. And this is the real identity of the Supreme Lord. And then what is the specific values of the Vedas? Vedaischa sarvai rahameva vedyo. And what is the necessity of the spiritual master and disciple? Srila Prabhupada says that the sum and substance of this is tat vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadyakshanti te jnanah jnaninas tattvadarshana. That the process of rendering transcendental service to the Lord should be inquired by approaching the bona fide spiritual master. And Prabhupada says, and this is how one must eventually retire. Eventually is very important, because Vidura has performed a lifetime of Varnashram service and then he is retired, right? So one should eventually retire from the material activities on the strength of the enlightenment, and one should be fully engaged in such transcendental query. And Prabhupada says this is the sum and substance of all the questions, the 4 questions that is being asked by Vidura here. So real identity of the Lord, 5.29. Real identity of the living entity, Jivera Swarup verse. Real identity of the Veda, Bhagavad Gita 15.15. And real identity of the process of exchange of knowledge, that is Bhagavad Gita 4.34. So a beautiful clarity Srila Prabhupada writes this purport. Text 39. Now next 3 verses, 4 verses, that is the final section of this chapter, where Vidura is glorifying Maitreya Muni. Nimittani cha tasyeha proktani anaghasurebhi svato jnanam kuto pumsam bhakti vairagyameva va. Translation.
Spotless devotees of the Lord have mentioned the source of such knowledge. How could one have knowledge of devotional service and detachment without the help of such devotees? Purport. There are many inexperienced persons who advocate self-realization without the help of spiritual master. They decry the necessity of the spiritual master and try themselves to take his place by propagating the theory that a spiritual master is not necessary. Srimad Bhagavatam, however, does not approve this viewpoint. Even the great transcendental scholar Vyasadeva had need of a spiritual master, and under the instruction of his spiritual master, Narada, he prepared this sublime literature, Srimad Bhagavatam. Even Lord Chaitanya, although he is Krishna himself, accepted a spiritual master. Even Lord Krishna accepted a spiritual master, Sandipani Muni, in order to be enlightened. And all the all the acharyas and saints of the world had spiritual masters. The Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepted in Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna accepted Lord Krishna as his spiritual master, although there was no necessity of such a formal declaration. So in all cases, there is no question about the necessity of accepting a spiritual master. The only stipulation is that the spiritual master should be bona fide. That is, the spiritual master must be in the proper chain of disciplic succession called parampara system. Suris are the great scholars, but they may not always be anaga or spotless. The anaga suri is one who is a pure devotee of the Lord. Those who are not pure devotees of the Lord are or who want to be on an equal level with him are not anagasuri. Pure devotees have prepared many books of knowledge on the basis of authorized scriptures. Srila Rupa Goswami and his assistants, under the instructions of Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, have all written various literatures for the guidance of prospective devotees, and anyone who is very serious about raising himself to the standard of a pure devotee of the Lord must take advantage of those literatures.
Now Vidura says, Nimittani chatasyeha proktani anagasurivi. Oh, the spotless devotees, anagasuravi, of the Lord have mentioned the source of such knowledge. And how one could have bhakti or detachment without the help of the devotees. So no knowledge here, Vidura says, without the devotees who are anagasuravi. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes that there are many inexperienced people who advocate self-realization without the help of spiritual master. So, especially Kali Yuga is all DIY syndrome. What is DIY? Do it yourself. People want to do everything on their own. People will see some video here and there, and they will feel that, why to approach somebody, why to do this under him, under that. So this is a DIY syndrome. Typically, when I study finance and other things, so there is this great DIY syndrome. People think that, because I am intelligent, because I can do this very well, I can do that also very well. But universally, there is something called as advisor alpha. Advisor alpha means by the virtue of approaching a proper advisor who is educated in, who is trained in, the wealth systems or, their field, one will automatically have, the much greater value that otherwise he is going to pay as the fees. Okay, this is called as the advisor alpha. Okay, anyway, coming back to, so this age is the age of DIY. People want to do it yourself. And when it comes to spiritual realization, where people think it's all abstract and it's all very, very, very personal, let me do it myself only. But here, Srimad Bhagavatam does not approve this viewpoint. Right. Prabhupada says even the great personalities, and one after another, Srila Prabhupada quotes 7 great personalities who are like greatest of the great in their own domain, in their own way, but all of them accepted bona fide spiritual master. Vedavyas accepted Narada Muni. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself, he accepted spiritual master Ishwarapuri. Lord Krishna himself, now he is to Ete Chamsa Kalapamsa, Krishnastu Bhagavan Swayam. He is the origin of all the avatars. But when he comes down, he accepts spiritual master, Sandipani Muni. All the great acharyas, all the saints, they accepted spiritual master. So we know all the acharyas in the disciplic succession. Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbarka Swami, Vishnu Swami, Rupa Goswami, Sanatana Goswami, Vishwanath Chakravarti, Jiva Goswami. All of them, they followed the method of disciplic succession. They had their own spiritual master and all other saints. Like in Maharashtra, we have Eknath Maharaj. Every Abhanga he will end. Eka Janardani Sharana So his spiritual master's name is Janardhan Swami, and he is saying that I am surrendered to Janardhan Swami, right? So all the saints, and then Prabhupada says even Arjuna accepted spiritual master. Somebody may say, oh, they were all saintly people or this or that. I'm a Grihastha. Arjuna was the topmost of a Grihastha. He accepted spiritual master. So one after another, Prabhupada says, in all these cases, there is no question of not accepting spiritual master. So approaching bona fide spiritual master is a must. Evabhikachet. There is a thrust on one must approach a bona fide spiritual master. Only thing is that, only stipulation is that Prabhupada says that he must come in the bona fide disciplic succession, proper Guru Shishya Parampara. And he should not be, some self-start, or he himself is a startup. From me only Parampara starts. He should not be that kind of a upstart. Suris are the great scholars. But all these great scholars may not be always Anagha, right? Anagha Suris are the pure devotees. So, Prabhupada says, unless one is not the Anagha Suri, one should not accept knowledge from him. Like Mayavadis are also Suris. They are very great scholars, some of the Mayavadis. But they are not Anagha. There is that sinful tendency to become one with the Supreme Lord. Prabhupada says, last snare of Maya. And because of that, knowledge cannot be accepted from them. And here, what is the example of Anagha Suri? Prabhupada says, Śrī Rupa Goswami and his assistants, like Jiva Goswami and others, Vishwanath Chakravarti, they all have written various literatures and they come in the category of Anagha Suri. And anyone who is very serious, raising the standard of one's pure devotion, must take advantage of these literatures written by Srila Rupa Goswami and those who are Rupanugas, especially Srila Prabhupada, who is also Anagha Suri. Text 40. एतान् मे पृच्छत प्रश्नान् हरे कर्म विवत्सया ब्रूहि मे यज्ञस्य मित्रत्वात् अजया नष्टचक्षुषः. Translation.
My dear sage, I have put all these questions before you with a view to knowing the pastimes of Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You are the friend of all, so kindly describe them for all those who have lost their vision. Purport. Vidura put forward many varieties of questions with a view to understanding the principles of transcendental loving service to the Lord. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 2.41, devotional service to the Lord is one, and the mind of the devotee is not diverted to many branches of uncertainties. Vidura's purpose was to be situated in that service to the Lord, wherein one merges undivertedly. He claimed the friendship of Maitreya Muni, not because he was a Maitreya's son, but because Maitreya was actually the friend of all those who have lost their spiritual vision due to material influence. Hare Krishna.
Further, Vidura says, Etan me pruchchataha prashnan. My dear Maitreya Muni, I am asking all these questions for Hare Karma Vivitsaya, for the purpose of knowing the glories of the Supreme Lord. Bruhi me agyasya mitratvat ajaya nashta chakshushu. Your friend to all, mitratvat, and kindly describe all these pastimes of the Lord so that we can get our vision. Currently, our condition is nashta chakshushaha. We have lost our vision. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, Vidura is putting forward these queries to know the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. He don't want to get diverted. Srila Prabhupada quotes, Vyavasayatmika buddhir ekeha kuru nandana bahushakhahi anantascha buddhayo avyavasayina. One who is not pinpointed, but here Vidura is very, very pinpointed. He says, Hari Karma Vivatsaya. I want to know all these topics so that we can glorify the Supreme Lord. He calls Maitreya, you are the Mitratvat. I am not your son, neither I am your disciple. Vidura's mood here is, I am just a Dasiputra Vidura. And I am asking all this because you are Mitratvat, you are a friend to all, and especially to those who are Nasta Chakshushaha, who have lost their vision due to material influence. And therefore, I am asking this question to you. Now, your answers will grant immunity from all material miseries. This is the text 41. Sarve vedascha yagyascha tapodhanani chanagha jivamaya pradhanasya na kurviran kalamapi. Translation.
O spotless one, your answers to all these questions will grant immunity from all material miseries. Such charity is greater than all Vedic charities, sacrifices, penances, etc. Purport. The highest perfectional work of charity is to give people in general immunity from the anxieties of material existence. This can be done only by performing activities in devotional service to the Lord. Such knowledge is comparable. Cultivation of the knowledge is in the Vedas, performance of sacrifice and distribution of munificent charities altogether cannot form even a part of the immunity from the pangs of material existence that is gained from devotional service. The charity of Maitreya not only will help Vidura, but due to its universal nature will deliver all others in all times. Thus, Maitreya is immortal.
Yeah. Now this charity, which charity? Charity of this transcendental knowledge of the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. O Anagha, your answers to all these questions will grant immunity from the material misery. And such charity is greater than Sarve Vedascha Yagyascha Tapodhanani. It's greater than all the Vedic charities, sacrifices, penances, and etc. All other things. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the highest perfectional work of charity is to give people immunity from the anxieties of the material existence. There is a very nice story about this. Once, one very senior sannyasi of ISKCON is very famous as, for his question answers. Yeah, His Holiness Jayadvait Swami Maharaj. So he was standing on one question answer booth, and it was Western countries, and suddenly there are two very healthy, very, very obese ladies came there, very extreme obesity. Okay. And they were just discussing few things, and Maharaj began to explain that, the basic understanding, the principle is you are not this body, you are the spirit soul. And as soon as they heard you are not the body, you are the spirit soul, there was such a broad smile on their face, and their face just lit up, and they just looked at each other. These like sumo kind of personality, Japanese sumo that you have seen, the wrestlers, those kind of personalities had come, and they just clapped to each other and said, "Oh, we are not this body, we are the spirit soul." Okay. So what this means is the knowledge of devotional service, the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam grants immunity from the material misery. Right? We have seen a direct experience of, where visiting a house where there was a very, very untimely death. And the atmosphere was so filled with, such grief and such intensity. But we started reading Bhagavad Gita, explanation of Bhagavad Gita, started reading Bhagavatam, and within just 1.5 hours time, literally the entire atmosphere was, transformed from being very grief stricken to very enlightened. Right? So this is the power of Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And Prabhupada says here, and therefore this is considered as the greatest charity. And this charity is not comparable even to Sarve Vedascha Yagyascha Tapodhanani Chanaka. Therefore, it is a duty of a devotee to discuss Krishna Katha. Right? This charity of Maitreya, Prabhupada says, is not only unlimited, but it is also timeless. Why timeless? Because this will not only help Vidura, but being universal nature, this charity will deliver all others in all times. And thus, Maitreya is immortal. It's a beautiful point. That's why devotees, they are called as Bhurida Jana. Tava Kathamritam, Tapta Jivanam. They are called as Bhurida Jana because they are the greatest welfare activities performed by describing knowledge of the Supreme Lord to the living entities in Parampara system. So we are slightly delayed by another 2 minutes because this is the last verse of this chapter. Text 42. Śrī Kṛṣṇa Uvacha Sa Ittham Saitam aprishta purana kalpa kuru pradhanena muni pradhanah pravruddha harsho bhagavat kathayam sachodhitastam prahasan nivaha. Translation.
Srila Sukadeva Goswami said, thus the chief of the sages, who was always enthusiastic about describing topics regarding the personality of Godhead, began to narrate the descriptive explanation of the Puranas. Being so infused by Vidura, he was very much enlivened by speaking on the transcendental activities of the Lord. Purport. Great learned sages like Maitreya Muni are always very enthusiastic about describing the transcendental activities of the Lord. Maitreya Muni, being thus invited by Vidura to speak, appeared to be smiling because he actually felt transcendental bliss. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the third canto, 7th chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Further Inquiries by Vidura.
Sa ittama prushtha. When thus questioned, by whom? Kuru pradhanena muni pradhana. Kuru pradhanena. Vidura, the prime minister of the Kuru dynasty, inquired to Muni Pradhana Maitreya Muni. Pravruddha harsho bhagavat kathaya. At the prospect of speaking Krishna Katha, Maitreya Muni began to smile. Sachoditam tastam prahasan nivahat. Srila Prabhupada translate this. The devotees of the Lord are always enthusiastic about describing topics regarding the personality of Godhead. Being thus infused by Vidura, he was very much enlivened to speak on the activities of the Supreme Lord. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada writes, the great learned sages like Maitreya Muni are always very enthusiastic about describing the transcendental activities of the Lord. And you question them, and such questions, almost like 30, 40 questions he's asking Vidurji. This after this, after this, and he says, my dear sir, somebody is not your son, disciple, or, Anuvratanam. You tell them what is not inquired also. And again he continues, such eagerness by such a qualified man, Vidura. And here Maitreya Muni became very, very excited, began to smile, prahasan niva, and began to answer this transcendental bliss. Just like in Pune, we have here Krishnananda Prabhu. He is so eager to speak about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes and so many things. What to speak of? Even if, you have, he will catch you and speak. And if you ask him, please describe to me this pastime, that pastime, you can just imagine how broadly he will be smiling. So the greatest delight of a devotee to speak about the pastimes of the Supreme Lord. And thus Srila Prabhupada concludes this third canto, 7th chapter. So we'll conclude here and continue tomorrow. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.